In order for me to do the presentation, I'm not going to take any questions for the first 45 minutes or so. That's number one. And it's 11 o'clock. I'd like to start. The proper time, actually, and the proper way to begin talking about today's topic is really asking Hashem for his blessings of protection. So I'm going to start with reading out loud a psalm. It's Psalm 123. If you listen, it's as if you're saying it with me, and then we'll start. Shamamales elecha nasasi es einai hayeshvi b'shamayim. Hine che'enei avodem al yad adonaihem, ke'enei shivcha al yad gevirta, ke'eneinenu el Adonai Eloheinu ad sheyichonenu. Chanenu, Adonai Chanenu, Kirav Subano Vuz, Rabas Sovelo Navshenu, Halag Ashananim, Habuz Gayenim. A song of ascents. To you I have lifted my eyes, you who are enthroned in heaven. Indeed, as the eyes of servants are turned to the hand of their masters, as the eyes of a maid to the hand of a mistress, so are our eyes turned to the Lord our God until he will be gracious to us. Be gracious to us, Lord, be gracious, for we have been satisfied with humiliation. Our soul has been overfilled with the derision of the complacent, with the scorn of the arrogant. So may HaKadosh Baruch Hu have mercy on all of us and bring Mashiach.
Amen. Amen.
We're going to start today by defining the problem, and I'm going to tell you the solution in 3 words because everything today is like sound bites of literally seconds. And that is, we solve this problem by 3 words: changing our thoughts, changing our attitudes, changing our perspective. That's what you have to remember. That is how we're going to solve this problem. And by solving this problem, we'll solve many other problems. Number 1, let's define the problem. Number 1, Jews are dying and have been killed and murdered. And they're still dying, and they're still being murdered, and they're still being killed. That is the problem. 2, this has been an ongoing problem since 1948. We're not talking the universal hatred called anti-Semitism, which goes all the way back to Jacob and Esau, and jumping to crusades and inquisitions. We're talking about the modern 20th century, the state of Israel, 1948. From that time onwards, Jews have been killed and are continuously to be murdered. 3, what changed a little bit in terms of urgency is today Jews are frightened. They're scared. What we used to consider Western civilization, like Western Europe and certainly America, there was a sense of, after the Holocaust, finally the nations of the world, they got it. They understand. And literally in the last year, and of course it's been from 1948, but especially in the last year, anti-Semitism has grown exponentially. And what used to be considered genteel anti-Semitism, which was like quiet under the surface, has now become very, very real, very apparent. And Jews are not scared per se, but we are really apprehensive. So that is the problem. If you take a look at the way the problem has been dealt with, this is the way it works. I left out 1 or 2 things. The bad people, we'll call them terrorists, we could call them Arabs, we could call them enemies, whatever you want. They kill and maim Israelis and Jews in general. Israel says to itself, well, we have to keep a balance. So we won't do anything until they do what's called the unthinkable. And then we respond when it's just simply impossible not to respond. As soon as that happens, the UN and all of the countries come and tell us, be deliberate, be thoughtful, be sensitive. There's a lot, we understand you're hurt, but there's a lot of nice people that are getting hurt, so don't do it. Israel ignores it and goes in and does some damage to some people. And now the Israeli population is somewhat they're able to breathe. What happens then is that international media goes against us. And of course, the first thing that they do is they'll take one or many of the civilian casualties, and again, civilian in italics, and they're going to blow it up. What happens then is Israel says we can't deal with the pressure, so they cave in, ceasefire. What do the terrorists say? We won. The terrorists say, we won. Take a look. We brought a country that's superior to us in firepower, and we got them to be insulted, hurt, wounded, and they're the ones that are asking for the ceasefire. Okay, what do they do with that? They go out and they raise millions of dollars because no one likes to support a failure. But when the terrorism wins, they say, look, we were very successful, now we'll be even more successful later, so let's raise money. So they begin again, Israel responds again, and the cycle continues. Okay, nothing that you did not know. I want to tell you something that perhaps you don't know. Everyone talks about October 7th. Just on Friday, they had facts and figures. Let me just tell you some facts and figures. On October 7th, amongst the 1,200 people that were murdered, many in the worst possible way, there were 300 soldiers, 860 civilians, and 53 children. When this happened, 80,000 people from southern Israel left. They were actually chased out. So they're internal refugees, but it's not only internal refugees. A lot of these people saw what they had once heard about happening in Nazi Germany. We're talking about people that are wounded with a permanent trauma. The day after October 7th, Hezbollah from northern Israel declared war. So now 62,254 people who live up north, they're also displaced. They're also internal refugees. Amongst them is over 15,000 minors. So we're talking about, since October 7th, over 140,000 people are out of their home. Incidentally, 80,000 of them had to give up jobs. Now, if that's not enough, during this 11-month period, over 7,500 rockets came from north and 187 drones. But in the meantime, 6,500 of them landed in Israel. It has murdered 19 soldiers, 23 civilians, and amongst the civilians, we're talking about children, many of them between the ages of 7 and 13. There are 258 people that are wounded just from that. Every one of them starts a fire. Over 138,000 acres have been burned. I mean, we have no idea. We talk about bring them home, the hostages, bring them home, the hostages. We're talking about an entire nation, not only the diaspora. We're talking about Israel itself is bleeding from incredible amount of wounds. If they would only be a scratch, it would be life-threatening. And they're not scratches. So let's define the problem. The problem is Jews are dying, Jews are continuously getting killed, and ultimately we have an ongoing issue of what's going to be. Okay, what is the solution? I said we have to, the solution is a thought process. Before we get to the thought process, there are three cardinal things that we're going to be talking about. The first one is that the land of Israel is ours. The second thing is we have to start thinking Jewishly. And the third thing is that we have to identify with pride who we are. Let me repeat it one more time. You can't fight for something if you're not sure you have a right to hold on to it. And you can't fight a Jewish war if you're using non-Jewish values. And finally, if you're not proud and you don't identify with your national and religious identity, otherwise known as if you can't walk with your head standing straight, you will never be successful. Now, those of you that have the book, you could open up, you will see that since 1948, Israel has had 15 major military operations. We're not talking about the usual, if there's such a word, it's almost obscene to use such a word, but the usual interactions of they caught someone. We're talking major military operations, which is millions of shekels. And what do they all have in common? That they haven't worked. Or, more correctly, what they all have in common is that they started a process, but they did not finish. When you say to the word intifada, if someone actually remembers what the word means, says, "Oh yeah, I remember that. That's when they throw rocks, right?" Yeah. There's over close to 2,000 people died over the 11 years of the two intifadas. Not to mention property damage, and not to mention the anxiety that people had walking on the street or going on a bus and so on. It's not a small thing. It's not that Israel said, okay, we can deal with a bunch of kids throwing rocks. We're talking about life-threatening activities which Israel simply swallowed. Simply swallowed. So where do we begin coming back to how we're going to solve these issues? We start with the very fact that the land of Israel is not optional. You know, we're all wonderful Jewish people over here, and we might think, you know, if I, God forbid, ate pork, would the world fall apart? Will Judaism become less Jewish? So it's between me and God. It is inconceivable that the Jewish people will exist as Jewish people without the Torah and without Israel. These are three things that are one. You cannot have Israel, the land of Israel, without the people of Israel. You cannot have the people of Israel without the Torah of Israel. We cannot have the Torah of Israel without the land of Israel. And from whichever angle you look at it, Judaism is the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and the Torah of Israel. So there's no such thing as, you know what, we have a lot of wealthy people, let's buy an island, you know, and just transport 6 million people or 7 million people, and we'll make a new country. And this time we'll get it right. So we'll make sure that there's no one that... You cannot have the Jewish people without Israel, period. So how do we know that the Jewish people and Israel are one? If you ask anyone, the first Jew, they'll answer correctly and incorrectly at the same time. The first Jew was Abraham. The first opening thing that's in your book is Genesis 12, and Hashem tells Abraham, leave your land where you were born. You were not born in Israel, you were born as an Israeli. You were born in somewhere next to Iraq, somewhere in Mesopotamia. Leave your land and go to the land that I will show you. And then Genesis 12, and Abraham passes through the land, and the Canaanites were then in the land. And Hashem says, I will give this land to your descendants. And a couple of verses later, on that day God made a covenant with Abraham, to your descendants I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, and so on. This is repeated when Moses is told to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. Hashem tells him, I have descended, this is Exodus 3, I have descended to rescue the Jews, to bring them from that land to a good and spacious land. And this continues over and over. So we have the Torah telling us that the land of Israel is going to be for the people of Israel. So there's never a question of, are you an interloper? Are you a person that stole something, whatever it might be? This is the Jewish land, period. And we cannot be Jewish without acknowledging that the land of Israel is ours. Now, the first thing that I have to tell you is people will say, Bible, Schmeibel, we're talking real people today. So, two very important statements. I'll start with the lesser of the two. And that is, who cares what the Goyim say? What we have to do is know what is important to us. So the same way someone that were to tell me your dietary laws are stupid, and that you can't marry people like from our faith is racist, I don't care. I am convinced that the Torah that I have and the faith that I have and the path of life that I follow is correct. Because I know this for me, any type of opposition or ridicule just means nothing. And ultimately, and this is something we've seen with our own eyes, ultimately, when a person has a strong conviction, which is unwavering, people will acknowledge it and respect it. So the fact that we say the land belongs to us because even before the Torah was given, if God gave it to us, and you say, what does that have to do with today? It doesn't make a difference what they're saying. If we believe it, it will happen. And there's actually a wonderful quote, I think it's at the end of your book, where the Rebbe writes to someone, okay. It's the last quote. The Rebbe's correspondence. The psychological factor has such an important role, page 23, that when two adversaries confront one another, when one of the adversaries sees that his opponent is spiritually, psychologically strong, self-confident, certain of his just cause, and not prone to be impressed by the adverse adversary or any non-Jew due to the inferiority complex mentioned above, this is the best way of preventing wars, not only major wars, but even wars of attrition. Essentially, we cannot convince the nations of the world of our righteousness if we don't believe we're righteous. So, we have a problem, we identify the problem, the beginning and the end of the solution is we have to change our thinking. And our thinking has to be that the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel based on this is what God wanted. Now, the Rebbe would often point this out to us and say, a person might feel, if the Goyim are not going to listen, we need them. So how does it help if we keep saying it? So the Rebbe would always quote the Rashi. Rabbi Yitzchak said, why does the Torah begin with, in the beginning God created heaven and earth? And the answer is, to tell the Jewish people, in case the nations of the world will come and say, you stole the land, you should answer to them. God created the whole world. He decides who should go where. Initially, he gave it to the 7 Canaanite nations, and now he gave it to us. So what Rashi is really telling us is an amazing thing. Rashi's saying is, you know the truth, and they won't accept it. But if you know that in advance, that will give you strength. It's like there's nothing new. The fact that someone's going to say, oh, that's old-fashioned, or that's biblical, or that's ancient, doesn't bother us. We've already been told thousands of years ago that this is what we should respond, and if they taunt and they disagree, it really won't affect anything. Now let's stop for a second. One of the great diplomats said to the Rebbe, it's beautiful, you're talking to me, a Jew to a Jew. But how do I say this to the UN? I got to talk to them in UN language. And the Rebbe, in his own words, said something to this effect. You tried everything. Tell me what you did not tell the UN. You told them if you look at the independence of, it's a Jewish homeland for 3,000 years. You told them that the Balfour guy gave you permission. You told them that the UN said it's okay. You spoke about Jewish survival. Who listened? None of them. So you tried all of the so-called logical things that a cultured 20th century, 21st century, and it didn't work. Why not go back and speak to them biblically? Because that is true, and it will work if you believe it. If you don't believe it, then whatever you say is hollow. But if you will believe it, they will accept it. Okay. What? Yeah, what we could do is video number 1. Summer 1991, okay? Okay. Basically, what I'm sharing with you today and what's going to be supplemented with a little bit of this is simply, these are Torah values. And while we're waiting for the Bluetooth, let me point out something. Torah has what to say about everything. Torah doesn't talk about only rituals. The Torah is concerned about your business. The Torah is concerned about your kitchen. The Torah is concerned about your bedroom. And the Torah is concerned about your entertainment. It's simply inconceivable to believe that the Torah has nothing to say about a country that has 6 million Jews just about, and a country which everyone is focused on. And the Torah has nothing to say about that? It's only politics? It's just simply stupid to say a statement like that. So the values that we're going to be talking about are Torah values. There was only one tremendously holy, great Torah leader that actually articulated the past, the present, the future of Israel in terms of vis-a-vis how it should act with its neighbors and the world. A lot of great rabbis, a lot of great scholars. No one really articulated, so what should Israel do now? The Rebbe did. So some of these little snippets will be, you'll see the Lubavitcher Rebbe talking, but you're only seeing literally moments. The Rebbe spoke hundreds of hours publicly, and it's printed, hundreds of hours of what Israel should do and how it could do it. Okay, first one.
Rabbi, can I say something?
No, not until 10 to 12.
Until when?
10 to 12.
הוא לא שאל אותי מה עושה השירות, במה מתמחה השירות. הייתה לי מיד איזושהי תחושה או הרגשה שהוא בדיוק יודע במה מדובר. כלומר, הוא לא זקוק לאיזשהם הסברים שלי או איזושהי מצגת שלי על מה, אלא מעניין אותו פחות או יותר אותם עניינים שבתוכן, אותם עניינים שבפנים, שבהם שירות הביטחון עוסק, וסיפרתי לו. סיפרתי לו את הדאגות שלי, את ההתחדות שלי בנושא הפלסטיני. כאשר אני סקרתי בפניו את הנושא של האינתיפאדה, אני התייחסתי יותר לאירועים המעשיים שקורים בשטח, ואת הניתוח שלי, של השירות, למה זה קרה, וכיצד אנחנו חושבים אפשר לטפל בזה, כאשר הרבי ניתח, הוא דיבר על כך שמדובר כאן בסכסוך שלא ייפתר, לא על ידי הפגנה כזאת או אבן כזאת או תוכנית טלוויזיה כזאת או אחרת. אני דיברתי בצורה הרבה יותר, הייתי אומר, קצרה, מעשית, הייתי אומר אפילו יותר שטחית. הרבי כמובן דיבר לעומק. הוא ניסה לנתח את השורשים, ניסה להבין יחד איתי, אם אלה השורשים, מהו הפתרון, מהי התרופה. הבקיאות של הרבי, גם בעניינים שאינם עניינים דתיים, במצב הבינלאומי, במצב הטרור, ולא רק במצב העם היהודי, מה שנקרא, מה שנעשה אצל הגויים, מה שנעשה אצל השכנים, הייתה מרשימה, מדהימה, גם בהיקפים שלה, גם ביכולת הניתוח.
על פי הידיד שיש לי מוושינגטון, אשר שם הסתרקתי, הידיעות מכל פין זריבה, אמרתי רוחני.
הרבי בכל הנושאים שלו התייחס יותר לשורשים, את הנצחיות קשה. השירות, איזושהי תחושה שלי, או איזושהי יותר הפלסטין, את הנושא של האינתיפאדה, אני התייחסתי יותר לאירועים שלי, של השירות, לפרה, וכיצד מדובר כאן בסכסוך. ניסה לה. הבקיאות של הרבי גם בעניינים שאינם עניינים דתיים, במצב הבינלאומי, במצב הטרור, לא רק במצב העם היהודי, מה שנקרא, מה שנעשה אצל הגויים, מה שנעשה אצל השכנים, הייתה מרשימה, מדהימה, גם בהיקפים שלה, גם ביכולת הניתוח.
על פי הידיד שיש לי מוושינגטון, אשר שם הסתרקתי, הידיעות מכל פין זריבה, אמרתי רוחני.
הרבי בכל הנושאים שלו התייחס יותר לשורשים, את הנצחיות של שותפות הגורל, נצח ישראל לא ישקר.
Der Lebenssteller Togigem Eretz Yisrael zu Hiv, ist das ein Nachlass selber.
בעצם הצורה שבה מנתחים, הוא מנתח את הדברים, בעצם הצורה שהוא אומר אותם, ובעצם התשובות שלו או ההתייחסויות שלו לנושאים שהועלו בשיחה בינינו, אני מבין גם מה הוא חושב כיצד צריך לנהוג.
והדת האוחז והקו שצריך לבטל בלי המשהו על עניין מקצועי, ובשביל זה יקבלו משהו, זה ההפך של הטבע של ארץ הבריס. ארץ הבריס נסקיימה, נסקיימה, על זה שאומר חזר, שמשהו חיוני בשבילו, אין אפשר בזה לבטל.
אני זוכר שבדרך במכונית למלון חזרה לניו יורק, עצמתי כך את העיניים וניסיתי לשחזר את השאלות ואת הניתוחים, כמה אני צריך להתעלות מעל המצוקות היומיומיות וההשתלטויות היומיומיות שהן קיימות למכביר.
Aber lechele rei bewohnt in Joni von Pikuach Nefesh, bewohnt in Joni von Gejanke, bewohnt in Joni von Kiddush Hashem והפוך. macht mich es wenig, wo so lehn besser von der Mafleid.
ההתייחסות של הרבי יעמדו לעולם ועד. מכיוון שהרבי לא אמר, או לא התייחס לאיזושהי תקופה שתסתיים ב... הרבי התייחס לנושא העקרוני, להתפתחות, לתהליכים, והם נכונים היו אז, הם נכונים היום, ואם אתה שואל את דעתי או עניות דעתי, יהיו לעולם ועד.
We tried every other form to get the people to understand the righteousness of our position. one of the things that we constantly say to the people is, well, we needed a land. It was after the Holocaust and we needed a land. Their response is very simple. Two wrongs don't make one right.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Two wrongs don't make one right. You need a home, so do we. And the whole idea of that the UN made it legitimate, maybe they made a mistake. And actually now they're regretting it. The one thing that cannot be refuted is the Bible says. We follow this Bible. So if you have an issue with us, you have an issue with God, you have an issue with the Jewish religion, and that's nothing new. We've always dealt with people who don't agree with the Jewish faith. But we have to believe it first ourselves. Let's now talk a Jewish value. So the first thing is, this land is ours, period. Nothing more to talk about. Second thing is, what is a Jewish value? A Jewish value is to give charity. A Jewish value is to pray. The number one Jewish value is to preserve human life in general, and in particular, Jewish life. So we have only 3 exceptions where a person is supposed to allow himself to die for his religion. We eat on Yom Kippur, we desecrate the Shabbos, we eat pork to save life. There's nothing more important as a Jewish value than to save and preserve life. So the first thing that every human being would ask, and the first thing that every country should ask is, how do we keep people from being murdered? How do we keep people from dying? And there's a very interesting way that the Torah says it. It's found in the book of Exodus, and it's more clearly explained in Talmud, Sanhedrin 72a. And that is as follows. If someone is coming to kill you, this is the expression, rise up and kill them first. No such thing as turning your cheek. If you know someone is going to kill you, rise up and kill him first. And the Rebbe pointed out once something. It doesn't say kill him first, it says rise up. What does that mean, rise up? When someone who's coming to harm you knows that you're going to kill him, he won't come. It's like the argument of why people should have guns. It's not going to make more crime. They argue on the contrary. If someone knows that you have self-defense and you could shoot him, he's not going to break into your house because he doesn't want to lose his life over $40. If the nations of the world, in this case, the neighbors of Israel, were to know that if they threaten Israel, Israel will get up to fight them. They don't even have to do it. They just have to get up. They have to mobilize their soldiers. They have to put DEFCON 5 or whatever it is. They won't do anything. The way you preserve life is by making sure that other people don't take it lightly or fervently. In the 15 wars that Israel had, has there ever been a war where we did it first? Everyone knows, 1967. Now this is an amazing thing.
Preemptive.
It was a preemptive strike. What justification? The justification was, they're going to kill us. Plain and simple. They're going to kill us. And the world around us was preparing Kaddish and eulogies. And our best, greatest ally, America, when Abba Eban flew to Johnson and said, you promised to protect us, because in 1956, we went to war with British and France against Egypt. Why? Because they closed the Straits of Tiran. America pressured Israel to go away and said, we will guarantee that if someone ever tries to close the Straits of Tiran, this is an international crime, and we will stick up for you. Nasser closes the Straits of Tehran. He sends away the UN. Abu Ibn flies to America and says to President Johnson, you got to help us. And he says, I'll try to make an international coalition. Calls back after whatever. I can't. So you're on your own. So Israel did what Israel had to do, a preemptive strike. What happened after that preemptive strike? God made open miracles, but much more important, there was a worldwide acceptance that Israel is something special. You cannot threaten this little country anymore because they conquered so many others miraculously. There's another time when we did something preemptive in 1981 under Begin. At that time, Iraq had a nuclear reactor, and Begin said, I will not be a prime minister over a second Holocaust. So he said, let's bomb Iraq. This is not next door. And he was told clearly by all of the countries, because they have to share intelligence, by America, don't do this. They did it. There was everyone, the UN, including America, everyone condemned Israel. And then when the smoke cleared, there was, Yasher Koyach, you did a good job. And today they say, oh, God forbid if Iraq would have had, during the Gulf War, if they would have had nuclear. Yeah. So if you look at simple a demonstration, every time we waited to be hurt, we waited to be wounded, all we got was terrible casualties and derision from the world, a ceasefire that brought another group. And the two times that in our lifetime we could see Israel doing something preemptive, only good. How could it be that Israel doesn't understand that? It can only be because they lost Jewish value, which is a life is important. Jewish life is very important. And if someone threatens Jewish life, what you're obligated to do as a Jew, as a charitable person, as a godly person, is go first and destroy your enemy. Look at what changed between 1967 and 1971. In 1967, we lost 800 people, way too much, most of it under Jordan, when we went into Old Jerusalem. And you know why we lost that? Also because of this misguided idea, we can't bomb because this Vatican has Christian stuff and the Muslims have Christian stuff, so we have to make sure that we don't destroy historical stuff. So we sacrifice human life, Jewish life, courageous people, not to destroy a building. But even with that perverted thinking, 1967 and 1973 is like between day and night. We lost 2,500 soldiers. Israel has been traumatized forever because of Yom Kippur. And you know what the worst thing is? The worst thing is that 1967, the Arabs had to admit they lost the war. In 1973, they never admitted it. Never admitted it. And that is why the Lubavitcher Rebbe couldn't understand, and he begged, go into Syria, because we went up to Kinatra, we went already into Syria, just parade through Damascus. You don't have to do anything. Just parade through Damascus. So they should see Israeli soldiers and Israeli tanks, and then they'll know that they lost the war. And the same thing with Cairo. We were already on the other side. If you go back a little bit in history, World War II comes from World War I. Who's the main instigator of World War II? Of course, Germany. Germany just lost the war in World War I. How did Adolf Hitler, Yamach Shemam v'Zichram, how did he convince them that they're going to be successful? One of the ways he convinced them was, he said, we never really lost. we were stabbed in the back by the communists and mostly by the Jews. In World War II, we conquered Berlin. The Russians went in and destroyed it and raped and killed. Now no one could say we didn't win the war. You go into the capital of a city and you show who's the victor. You break the arrogance of the enemy. That's what the Rebbe was hoping for. He didn't want 1973 war. No one wanted it. He wanted preemptive. But if you're not going to do a preemptive and you're already fighting literally for your existence, at least finish the job. And those of you that remember the story, the negotiation with Kissinger, the whole 7th Army, terrible. Okay. You know, some people say like this, if we would have gone and preemptive, we wouldn't have had American support. And we all know that in 1973 there was an airlift. A couple of little things. And this too, the Rebbe says, but it's very short, so I'm not going to show it. Number one, the airlift started on day number 9. We already were extended north and south, and we were already winning, actually. At that time, we were winning, and that's when they decided to help the winner. More importantly, who needed America? If we would have had preemptive, there's a very good chance the war would have been over in 6 days. Not in 3 weeks, and not with the terrible hurt. Because 1967, there was this idea that Israel is invincible. From 1973, it's not invincible. Take a look, we almost took Tel Aviv. If they wouldn't have stopped, there was nothing stopping the Egyptian army from going to Tel Aviv except it was too easy. There's some type of a trap, which is open miracles. But the bottom line is that Yom Kippur, we won and we lost major stuff in whatever we gained in 1967. What's the point? The point of it is 1967 we acted Jewishly. We acted Jewishly. And in 1973, on the holiest day, our Prime Minister Golda Meir and the Dayan, no, let's not do it. We were not really sure. The world will condemn. What do you mean the world will condemn us? Think like a Jew. A Jew gets rid of an enemy because there's nothing more important than preserving his life. Now, I want to point out, we never say, let's just bomb them into smithereens. When the Jewish nation is strong, everyone profits. There's no Gaza, there's no children that are getting killed, there's no economy being disrupted. This whole idea of, let's look at these poor people, they're getting hurt. These poor people are getting hurt because we did not do our job. Our job was to destroy evil people, terrorists, and enemies. Because we did not, that is the exact reason why there's so much human tragedy. To put it a little bit differently, if we were to fight as Jews in the long run, we will be saving not only Jewish life, but Arab life. Just take a look at what happened in Gaza. You have them living next door to Jewish people. No problems. No problems. What's the problem? And if you don't like Gaza, move. Again, no restrictions. But because we allowed evil to flourish, and we knew who they are, we know where they are, and we have these targeted assassinations, which means we're following them. Only because we allowed that, it's like the weeds are choking the flowers. Get rid of the weeds, and the flowers will grow. What happens if you take out some of the flowers? It's for the benefit of the garden. You know, there's so much written about the world wars. And in one of the books, I forgot to write his name down, he wrote, in 1933, Yamach Shema, may his name be erased, Mr. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, And he was very clear that he wants to dominate Europe. What would have happened if France would have said to Germany, just for conceivably, this man is a demagogue, he's a threat. If you don't get rid of him, we're going to go into your country. Of course, it didn't happen. 80 million people died during the war. 7 million Germans. Could you imagine? All of that could have been avoided if the European countries would have been proactive. They were not proactive. They did not do what they should have done. And we're still suffering from that. And who suffered the most? The people that actually were the ones that started it. 1,000-year Reich turned into smoke and smithereens. If we wouldn't have rebuilt, who knows what would have happened? When it came to Japan, we were more proactive. We bombed 2 of the places. We saved many, many lives. And actually, those of you that read a little bit of the history know that while they were winning, the Germans, we sent actually a bomber to bomb Tokyo, just to show them that they're not... So again, the first thing is, this is our land, period. And you have to say that because you believe it. And then it makes no difference whether the person's going to accept it or not. What he's going to know is, this man cannot be spoken to because he's convinced the land is his. The second thing is, put Jewish life first. And Jewish life is so important to preserve, as well as in general, that you should take proactive or whatever it is even before it happens. We have to read something together. Very important. It's the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch is the code of Jewish law, and look on page 21. This is Jewish law. We know how important it is to keep the Shabbat. This is Jewish law. If non-Jews besiege Jewish cities, even if their goal is only for money, we don't desecrate the Shabbos. Because the worst thing that could happen is they'll break into the store and take some merchandise. But if they come to kill, or with no reason, they're coming, we go out with weapons and desecrate the Shabbos. Now, what that basically means is we're starting the war. We hear that in 20 miles from now, they want to come into our territory. In a city near the border, even if they just come for straw, they're not coming for anything of value. We initiate a military offensive, even if it means to desecrate the Shabbos. And halacha views any city which is open to the border. In other words, once they get into the city, it's easier for them to conquer. Any city that from that city they go further, it's considered a border city, and we're obligated not only to defend ourselves, we're obligated to start a war. We go out, we meet them with weapons, and then they say, why are you so belligerent? We don't want to do anything. Yeah, if you come too close, we are in danger. There isn't a city, village, hamlet, kibbutz in Israel today which is not considered a border city. It is so easy for once they're in the land of Israel to do whatever they want wherever they go. So this whole idea of let's wait. We have Gaza, we have Lebanon, we have Egypt. Let's wait until we're hurt. And then we'll see. Is against Jewish value, against Jewish law. You could weep in frustration sometimes. So why don't they know this? Because they're not thinking Jewishly. That's the reason. There's no Jewish philosophy that has permeated the IDF. And the IDF is forced to listen to its politicians. And here the Rebbe never stopped reminding us. In Jewish law, it's Yom Kippur, okay? And someone says, oh, I feel like I'm dying. You know, I gotta eat. Goes to the rabbi, I gotta eat. Rabbi says, you know what, I'll talk to another rabbi. He says, I'm dying. Nobody talking to another rabbi for. So, you know what, Mr. Finkelstein is a great accountant. I'll talk to him. You talk to a doctor. There's only one authority when it comes to whether or not a person is sick. And that is a doctor. What happens if there is no doctor? So then no one knows their own health like themselves. So 10 rabbis say this guy is fibbing. You know, he just wants to eat. He's putting on a big show. And he says, Rabbi, I gotta eat. According to Jewish law, you listen to him, not to the rabbis. Even if there's a doctor there. And the doctor says, I don't get it. I mean, his pulse is okay, yeah. And he says, I'm dying. You listen to him. When it comes to matters of security, who are we supposed to listen to? The answer is the experts. Who are the experts? Military people are experts. Makes no difference if they're religious or not. Military experts are the experts when it comes to security. Who should you not listen to? Politicians. When a politician says like this, yes, I understand that we're taking a risk, but there's an assurance that we'll have the backing of the world. That is not Jewish. That's political maneuvering. Maybe, maybe not. And there's a word in Hebrew. Safek nefashot lahachmer. If there's a question of life, we're strict. This whole idea of let's negotiate with our enemies is so contrary. Or something like, I'll get back to this in a minute, but like a slogan, peace for land. Okay? What does that mean, peace for land? You see how it goes against Jewish law. Jewish law just now said they're not even in your border, but they're coming. They have weapons. We don't know what they want. We really don't know what they want. Meet them with force. What does land for peace mean? That means you're inviting terrorists to come closer to you. The further they have to travel, the easier it is to pick them up. If they're coming from Syria, it's easier to pick them up when they're coming from the West Bank. Literally, minutes away. And if they have to travel an hour away or 45 minutes away, we are more secure. When we're talking today, God forbid, about rockets, minutes count, seconds count. Seconds count. 7 seconds and you could get into a shelter. And if you give in and you give land, that means you don't have 7 seconds, you only have 4 seconds. That means people will die. That means property will be destroyed. That means people will be anxious. When is it coming? Plus, you have to be idiotic to realize what is the definition of insanity? You've heard that before. Doing it again and again and again and hoping for a different result. Every single time there was a ceasefire, more tsuras. Every single time we give another piece of 2 inches of Israel, more tsuras. Let's divide Israel into A, B, and C. Surah, trouble never ends. Never ends. Let's go back. We have an issue, we have a problem. How do we solve this problem? The answer is be Jewish. That is really the answer. Be Jewish, think Jewish, act Jewish. And this is not happening the way right now, the way Israel is fighting and so on. Another very interesting observation, which is really very sad. You know, Iraq invaded Kuwait. What happened to Kuwait? It was invaded. And then when the war is over, Kuwait goes back to being Kuwait. What happens if Israel's invaded? Do they have a second chance? There's no second chance. We used to have a guy over here, Moshe Meir, blessed memory, he spoke 3 languages besides English. I said, how did you know so many languages? He was somewhere near Hungary, I think, and it was in his lifetime and the lifetime of his parents, 3 different countries took it. So he had to learn Czech, he had to learn Hungarian, but you know what? He didn't have to leave his house. He didn't have to leave his house, and 3 different countries were there. Does any one of us think remotely that if the Arabs would be in Tel Aviv, that we would be here talking about Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem? They don't have a second chance. It's unique. There's no one to talk with for peace. There is no peace. There's a verse that says peace is, the Rishayim, the wicked, talk about peace. The righteous create peace. And we create peace by being strong and proud, and again, thinking, speaking, and doing Jewish. And it's a Jewish value that even the most secular Jew can understand. We want to preserve life. I could go on and on, but it's already 12 o'clock, and I'm okay to take whatever questions, but not my closing argument, just a statement. If we have to go back to Jewish values, we cannot necessarily demand every Israeli to do that, but we could be more Jewish. It's time to stop being defensive. You wear your yarmulke, you wear your sheitel. I'm a proud Jew, not a proud Israeli. I'm a proud Jew. You're genocide, murderers. Trish, you know nothing about morality without my Torah, without our Torah. Every one of us has to be more Jewish and identify more as a Jew, and that will have, at least in a small way, a ripple effect. Israel has tried everything, including the strength that Bibi is showing. I don't want to be in his place. He has tremendous pressure. I don't want to be in his place. But God put him there. Until he's not there, that means God gives Israel the strength. I have much more to say, but yeah.
First of all, 90% of the Gazans support Hamas.
About the news, okay? There are 2 things about the news. One is information. The second thing is, what are you going to do with that information? So let's assume for a moment that we accept what Frank said, which is correct. Most of our news outlets, thank you very much, is all slanted at best and at worst pure propaganda. So now, if you go to somewhere else, you'll get more authentic news. How is that going to help? Our approach is not we need more publicity. I would, as an individual, I would be perfectly satisfied and wish, actually, and pray that there be a news blackout. Nothing from Israel for the next 30 days. Declare martial law and do what you gotta do. The whole concept today of news is not for the information. It's really to create emotions by people. Because emotions sell. People are not interested in facts and figures. They want a story. So, again, what you said is correct. It's really helpful to get a different perspective from different news, but it's meaningless unless Israel changes the way it sees itself. Unless that happens, other than the miracle of the Messiah coming today, it doesn't seem there's going to be a change. Talking about those news things, you read. The soldiers are saying, you're not letting us fight.
I agree.
You're not letting us fight. They're risking their life. Their life is no life. I mean, they have no time to eat, drink, sleep. It's boiling. I mean, they're truly tzaddikim. They're really righteous people who give up everything to save fellow Jews, and the government is not letting them do their job. We celebrate little successes. We're not winning the war. And it's a horrible thing to acknowledge. We're not winning the war. I gave a whole long list. Israel is bleeding. Israel is bleeding, and the Jewish people are hurting. And that we have not heard Israel say to the world, we are fighting for our existence, period. There's nothing more to talk about. You can condemn us from today to tomorrow. Which leads me to something very important. What is the role of America in all of this? This is really one of the conundrums. America is our strongest ally. It's our big brother. It supports us in the world arena. So we can't do anything that might hurt or minimize America. So we have to take their opinion into very, very important. Not only that, all our arms come from them. Who are we kidding? We need bombs. Where are we going to get it from? That whole attitude is flawed from the beginning. Number one, I had a brother that worked for a religious man. He gave a good salary, and it was no issue about Shabbos and everything else, but he was a stickler for 7 o'clock until 5:30, not a minute. So he once described it. He said, I'm wearing golden handcuffs. It's a handcuff, but it's made out of gold. Israel is beholden to America. Let's plain and simple. What does America want? What's best for Israel or what's best for America? And it's not a terrible sin to say that. You don't even have to be a Trump MAGA guy. America should be concerned what's best for America. It is as clear as the sun shines that if they feel supporting Israel is going to be detrimental in some form to America, they won't support Israel. Period. Period. It's as obvious as it goes, and we shouldn't expect it. So where will Israel get its strength? Number one, it can generate inner strength. That's the first thing. Second, and when they do that, America will respond because America likes to support a winner. Everyone likes a winner, you know. Israel is a winner, so they'll get it. You know, there's another great country, it's called India. Over 1 billion people. We're not allowed to buy any weapons from them. Frankly, China, we're not allowed to buy weapons from them. Even Russia. Where does it say? In which Shulchan Aruch, what biblical thing does it say, thou shalt only have United States of America as your sole supporter? Israel has boxed itself in and doesn't want to go out. It's not that hard to go out. There are other places. Israel has given up, besides the intelligence and everything else. An example, Israel in the 1980s had a fighter jet that they were ready to produce, the Levi jet. They had already over 80 flights. And America said, no, we want to be the sole supplier of F-15s, whatever it might be. We gave that up. We had offers to buy oil from Norway. America didn't like that. So much we don't know, but the reality is, as much as Israel is beholden to say thank you to the United States of America, it also has to say to the United States of America, we're not your vassal. And that's exactly what they're doing, and they've done it. And he came to the Congress and he said it in his own words. No one will ever get us, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm waiting for your applause. We don't need their applause. Interesting. And this actually happened right before, like in the same year of Camp David. Taiwan was promised by the United States of America, you are our China. And then what happened? vaginas. Why? Because America realized that this is a rising power, and they wanted to acknowledge it. All of you know what's going on in Ukraine and in Russia. You know something? Why did the Ukraine fight back? It's like this. Ukraine used to have the third largest nuclear arsenal. And then in the good days of the 1994, they wanted Ukraine to give up all of its nuclear stuff. It was called the Budapest Memorandum. So they said, we'll do that with one condition. Our nuclear arsenal is our defense. So promise that no one is going to attack us. America signed on that paper. Okay, we all know what's happening. Where's America? It's a joke, a sad joke, to believe that a foreign country is going to defend you when you need it. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't say thank you. Obviously we should say thank you. We're told in the Torah, even our enemies, like the Egyptians, you can't despise them. After all, you lived in their country for 200 years. They enslaved you, but after all, you were there. It's not like we're insulting America, but America can't figure out Israel. It's a country that calls up Congress, what should we do next? What do you do? Do what you have to do. And when you hear, I actually believe that the Goyim, the non-Jews in the Senate that are pro-Israel, are far more eloquent spokesmen than anyone from Israel, including the Prime Minister. I like these guys from the Bible who talk about this is the biblical thing, and we should support our strongest ally. We don't need anyone from Israel to run and to bow obsequious. I could go on and on. It's not important. The point is, a Jewish value is Hashem gave us this land. Hashem makes, and will continue to make miracles. Why are we allowing ourselves to be humiliated? Not even to mention the terrible destruction that's happening. What can I do? What can you do? I don't know, other than we have to be more Jewish. Maybe by us being more Jewish, somehow they'll get the story. When you're talking to your neighbors, frankly, if someone talks to you about genocide, there's really very little you could talk about. From river to sea, sea to river, what are you going to say? They're so ignorant. There's no language. And partially because they're as dumb as they come, and partially because they're so smart. They've read every single news report, and it's all anti-Israel. So you know how you do it? You say like this. This is a Jewish religious concept. And unless you want to hear Jewish law, we don't really have much to talk about. So what are we talking about? We're fighting for Jewish existence. That's what we're fighting for. We don't want the hostages home. We want peace. Bring them home. Bring them home. I went to the rallies because for me not to show up in the rally would mean that I don't really care. But the whole thing was so backwards. Yeah. We're willing to live with terrorism. We're willing to live with rockets. We're willing to live with humiliation. But this we can't live with anymore. I don't have words to tell you how repulsive it is.
Plus, it should be let them go, not bring them home.
Let them go. It should be let's win. That's what it should be. Let's win. So ultimately, what's the true solution? The true solution is God will have to bring the Mashiach. If he was supposed to be a day later, he has to come earlier. That's the answer. Only Mashiach can undo the damage of 80 years of false and unhealthy thinking. But there is something that we can do besides even what I said maybe 4 or 5 times, be more Jewish, and that is to change the way of thinking of the world as well. And go back to this very basic truth. human life is important. You don't think Gazan children are as important as Israeli children? What are you supposed to answer to that? Yes or no? If it's yes, then leave. No, you're a terrible person. So when was the last time you beat your wife? What are you going to answer? It's a loaded question, and it makes them a symmetry over here. It's like this. Why are Gazan children being killed? Why? Because of Israel? Who started this war? Did we have nothing to do than kill kids?
Biden started.
You understand? It's a stupid question.
Obama.
And it's a false premise. We don't want anyone to die. Right now, the best way to save human life is by destroying the enemy. Will there be people? It's a war area. In war, people die. And by not destroying it, we're destroying everyone. Everyone. Because even if today there was a great breakthrough and they brought back all of the hostages, which we don't know, and including the dead ones, and there would be a ceasefire, what would be accomplished? So we'd be dancing the horror. Israeli press would make this really very exciting. Will the people living in Gaza be more secure? Will the people living in North, can they go home? No, Hezbollah has nothing to do with Hamas. If Iran promises not to fight us, Hezbollah said, we're not Iran.
But they are.
You understand? There's a concept over here that even if there's one partner who partially will declare, I won't hit you today, there's still 10 other people that say, we are going to hit you today. We don't have a choice. This is a fight for survival. And Israel's not saying that. Not saying that, and they're not doing it. They're not doing it.
I've heard there are forces in the government that are totally bowing to the Biden administration, and there are other forces who agree with you. That the sooner this thing would have been fought,
Never have happened, but it did happen. Question is, what are we doing now? The answer is, what we're doing now is wrong. We're hurting them, and we're hurting them because we're allowing ourselves to be hurt. And I go back. This is a land that we cannot live without. For 1900 years, we were not in the land of Israel, but 3 times a day we're davening for Israel and for the people of Israel, and to go back to the land of Israel. We can't live without this land. This is God's wants us to have this land, otherwise we cannot follow his commandments. And in this case, we're not even talking religion, we're talking simple existence. Simple security. I'm telling you, we have no idea of how bad it is. We had a good friend of mine came from Israel, he's visiting his parents. How are things? He answers like I am. Baruch Hashem, fine. Fine. How could you say it's fine? Well, I'm living in Jerusalem, there's not much of a difference. The restaurants are open. I said, no difference? Well, everyone's walking around with a gun. When I go to shul, everyone has a gun. I mean, that in itself tells you how crazy things are. The same way a Jew living in the desert thought it was perfectly natural to walk out of his tent and to see a white something on sand, to take it home, and it should taste like Chinese food. That's very natural. It's called man and has every taste imaginable. And it comes twice a day, delivered without FedEx. B'chaya, right? Until you realize, I can't believe, this is a miracle. That you don't realize that this is a miracle? Where are you getting your water? Oh, it's coming from 3/4 of miles away. It's coming from a rock. There's no river, there's no sea. You get used to miracles. Israel has gotten used to tragedies. It's gotten used to pain and suffering. It's unbelievable how a human being, in this case, the organism called the Jewish people, that suffer and suffer and suffer, are able to say, Baruch Hashem, it's all good, it's all good. Today, you know what's really good about today? Today, they caught the bad guys who wanted to blow up. Oh, it's wonderful. L'chaim. You're living with a terrorist. You could have been killed, but it didn't happen. So Baruch Hashem. And what about if it did happen? Is Rachel home? Oh, Baruch Hashem. Rachel is home. What about everyone else? My heart breaks, but Rachel is home, so it's Baruch Hashem. How could any one of us live like this? And they're doing it. And they have an army, they have a police, and they have a government. I don't get it. Because they're not thinking Jewish. That's all. I'm going to end. Mashiach is going to come, and miracles will happen. Yeah.
One of the